Hello and welcome to the show brought to you by the YAFC. I'm Everett and I'm so excited to be here for our eighth episode. And for those of you that are new to the show, because I think we're getting some new listeners, the YAFC or Youth Advocates for Change is a group of youth and young adults from across the United States working with the Ray Center, which is a technical assistance center focused on supporting parent information centers in the area of transition. And the YAFC creates content and material that helps support the work of the Ray Center. And this podcast for us is a labor of love. We love doing this and bringing this to you every month, and we're really excited that it is almost Thanksgiving, and this will be coming out here in a couple of weeks, probably right after the holiday, and you'll be able to listen to this, and then there'll be episodes all through the month of February. So, but tonight I have two amazing guests with me to have a conversation around the concept of independent living, which we'll talk a little bit about here in a second, and answering awkward questions like, how do you do a task, a daily living task, as a person with a disability? What do you do? How do you do this or that? And people are just curious about those things, and they love to ask those questions. But I thought it would be great to have our guest tonight talk about that as two people who are chair users, like myself. And so we really know that this kind of conversation is focused on people that, or we believe that people that have very apparent disabilities that you can see. And so, but I want to give our guests a chance to introduce themselves. So, Aaron, do you want to go first? Say where you're from and why the YAFC is so awesome.
Sure. So yeah, I'm Erin. I'm from Minnesota. And so I would say probably one of my favorite things, as we were talking about even before the show was, the YAFC, gives me a good opportunity to kind of vent to people who are not only
Yeah.
similar ages, but like people with disabilities as well. It's like a huge stress reliever for me and gives you that sense of community, which is super helpful.
Yeah, we were having a little bit of a vent sesh, like literally right before this, just for a couple minutes. So,
Yeah.
hey, Atif, you want to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and why the YFC is so awesome for you?
Hi, my name is Ajit, and I am from New York. And the reason why the YFG is so important to me is because I get to, relate to people that are like me and in my situation.
Sure. And I think that bond and being able to know that we're sharing information
Yeah, yeah,
with people across the country, people with disabilities and their families and all of that. And so I I have to say, honestly though, as a host, I'm gonna have to like keep my mouth shut because this independent living topic or the idea of independent living is super near and dear to my heart because the independent living philosophy is not really like a physical thing. It's more about an idea that people with disabilities should be able to be in control of their own lives, making their own choices, and being independent. And so, my first question to both of you, and Aaron, I'm going to go to you first, and then go to Atif and kind of ask this question. But like,
yeah.
what does living mean to you? Because it isn't the same for everyone, right? It isn't always about just doing everything on your own. So,
Sure.
Aaron, do you want to talk about that? Like, what independent living means for you?
Yeah, so I would basically talk about independent living as far as like having, control over what you need to do in a day. And of course, like any person, you don't have total control, but at least there's certain things that you have to get through the day with whatever you need to do. And so, for example, like I physically cannot transfer myself to bed, but the way I'm able to do that independently for myself, as far as what independent means, is by getting help from someone else. So I'm able to advocate for myself of what I need to get that task done. So in my mind, that's what independent living is basically being able to take something that you may not be able to physically do yourself, but having this partnership with either another person. It could even be technology, like an assistive device even, that can get something done that you can't physically do because of your disability. So that's kind of how I view independent living.
Well, and that's and as you're saying that, I was thinking about like people that might have like reading disabilities or things with writing, like the use of AI and the use of like audio books and all that sort of stuff. Like that's all promoting independence
Mhm.
and choice. And so this really isn't just like a physical disability thing, but I think that it resonates most with people like yourself and I who use supports. Atif, what about you? Like, what does independent living mean for you, being a person that gets supports
Um,
on a regular basis
eh,
as a guy with CP like me?
it means a lot, like Aaron was saying, being able to do the things that you need in life on your own, and and to get to that level of independence. That's what really means a lot to me.
And
Mhm.
I just
Especially
have
with in the independent living, for independent living.
sure, and I just have a question, Atif. Like, and don't go off on me too much on this. And but this is almost like a bonus question, right? I wasn't going to ask this, but as you're talking, what has the journey been like for you to figure out like what works for you? Has it always been
Um,
good, or has there been frustrating
no,
points?
it's been a very rocky road because not every day is the same. I'm
Sure,
sure Everett, you can relate to that. Not every day is the same.
sure, sure. And Aaron, you
So,
want to like go ahead, Atif. I have more to say. I don't want to cut you off.
no, no, what were you gonna say, Everett? I'm sorry.
No, I wanted Aaron to kind of build off of that. Like, what has the journey been like for you to like kind of figure out what works and like, and do you
Yeah.
feel like you've kind of figured that out now, being in your mid 20s?
No, nothing's figured out, I would say. Um, unfortunately. But I think that's the thing is like with independent living and depending on like what you're able to physically do or what you need, and like we talked about technology and how far that's even advanced too, is that I think like, I've gone through personal care attendants where now I just know the personalities I look for. I know what to ask people. I know what will, mesh, but I think there's just always going to be things that don't necessarily there's not things you can always predict. And so I think like my thing that
Yeah,
I've always built is this kind of idea of like not only like building resilience around it, but also kind of building a support system because things are kind of unpredictable, and having that support system, whether it's friends, family, neighbors, is like a
yeah.
super great thing
It's
to
it's exactly what Atif referenced, that every day is different, right?
yep.
And so
Yeah, it's not the same. You deal with different personalities,
yes,
different mood swings, and
y-
the
y-
mood swings is a big thing because you also got to think about like your caregiver might not be in a good mood because they feel like it's very repetitive because they have to help you every single day to get you up to do this, to do that, and then it
mhm.
upsets you because you feel like, what did I do wrong? I didn't choose to be like this.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, that's a really big point about like when you have to kind of
Aaron, what did you have to say? Because you're like nodding your head. Yes, yes.
go
Like
ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Aaron
I
is
relate to what
very
he's.
vigorously nodding her head.
Well, I think that's the thing. And like, I think like the number one thing I think back to like when I was in college, and all of my personal care attendants were also in college, so there were those days where when finals would come up, we would all be in the trenches of like trying to figure out finals. So like, I think like, I bet Atif has also dealt with this is like, sometimes you do have to compromise with, the people who are caring for you and like really figure
Yeah,
out the
oh yeah,
dynamic and life happens.
and then if you really need me, if you really need your need met, you're like you get called selfish. Oh, you're selfish. You don't care, but like, do you understand the situation I'm in?
Mhm.
And even if you don't get called selfish, you still feel selfish, right? People can call you selfish, but it's
Yeah,
also
yeah,
like
yeah,
you
yeah,
are you are very aware, and I think what you're both speaking to is the fact that when you have to rely on support to maximize your independence, you have to
yeah,
manage personalities a lot and learn how to ask for support and then understand people's
yeah,
like what's the, not bandwidth, but like what their availability is, right? So I call it my disability is maybe very emotionally aware of other people's feelings,
Yeah.
but I feel like that helps me in other places too. So the next question I wanted to ask though is related to independent living, but I think it's more about, let's say you're meeting a person on the street, or you're meeting a person, you're out at a party, you're in a classroom. I'm trying to think of all the places this has happened to me, in a restroom, whatever. And you meet someone and they just ask you a question that's like, how do you do X? Right? So it could be like, how do you go to the bathroom? How do you get dressed?
Yeah, like it's not, how do you pee? Like they go
Right.
that in depth.
Yeah, it's that.
And I'm like,
Yes.
I'm like,
Yeah.
excuse me, like,
Yeah. So well, so
like
Atif, like,
they want sequential order of how everything goes, and I'm like,
yeah.
what?
Well, so people can ask those questions. So my question is like, Atif, like, how do you approach when somebody asks you that kind of question? Like, how
Um,
do you go to the bathroom? Like,
well, I
what's
just
your
tell them
attitude?
respectfully. I just tell them I'd rather not discuss it, or it's none of your business.
Right. Sure. And so, Aaron, do you have a different a thought on that? Like, are you more of an open book about things like that, or do you like,
No, I
Atif
don't
is
think
not? I
so.
can feel that. And go
Yeah.
No, I
ahead.
don't think I don't think Erin is either because she's a beam
Yeah, well,
and
let's see what she says, because she's a
Yeah, I
beast.
mean, I probably have like maybe like a Midwest approach to it. I think like a lot of it has to do with my mood and who the person is. Like if this is like a
yeah.
friend I've had for a couple of years and they're like genuinely interested and like want to support me in that, fantastic. Maybe we can talk about it at a surface level. But if this is like some random guy named on the
Exactly,
street, I'm like,
exactly, yeah.
I will most likely say, like, I don't know what this has to do with you, so please leave me alone type situation.
Yeah,
Right.
So I think
exactly.
there's
Sure.
like a lot of variations.
Leave
Yeah.
me alone now.
Well,
Like, I don't even know who you are. And
Hmm.
well, and
Exactly.
let me just ask this question, because uh Aaron, like, you talked about when it depends on who the person is. Like, what's your gauge of when it's okay
Yeah.
to start divulging information like that, or answering someone's questions? Like, when does that become like, I'm okay to talk about, some of the way that I need support, and not necessarily going to the bathroom? Maybe that's a bad example to start with.
Yeah. Maybe that
But
one's a
like,
little too intimate, right?
what do you do when you know you want to start divulging information about how things are done, so that people that you want in your life understand you better? Because there is that part too, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good differentiator too in my mind is like, how does this person relate to you and your life? So, like, for example, like if you're starting a relationship with that person, or if this person is a member of your family who genuinely cares and wants to be part of your life, or who's a friend, or that type of thing. I think that that's a huge differentiator is that once you kind of establish, that this person is genuine and actually wants to support you and have a strong relationship, I think that that's kind of a foundation to give you almost like this permission to yourself to introduce maybe information. I mean, not like Atif said, giving them like a step-by-step rundown,
yeah,
but
because
like
that's
surface level, right?
because you know what it is. That's what people want,
Yeah.
and it's really embarrassing. Because
Yeah.
I was in school. Like, let me give you a story. I was in school with this. I was in a regular class, and the kid was like around my age, like 18, 19, 20, around that. And then the kid goes, "Wait, so how do you go to the bathroom?"
Hmm.
Like,
Just
I'm
out,
like,
the part that gets
boy,
me is it's out of nowhere like that. It's like, oh, we're in class, and it's like, I was just wondering,
yeah.
how do you go to bed at night, or what do you do when you're in the, because I've actually had someone say to me, similarly, Atif, I've had someone say to me that I never really thought that you were a person outside of the wheelchair. And by that, I mean they never really,
yeah,
they can't picture the fact that,
yeah. I've gotten worse, Everett. Don't
yeah,
even.
what, where it's like they think that you don't get out of your chair, that you just,
Yeah,
you're forced to stay
yeah.
in it all the time, right?
No, and they think, oh well, you have a brain, you talk, or are
There,
you
there's that whole
paralyzed?
piece. There's that whole piece too of like, that was one of our last episodes, was about people's low expectations of people. Like, oh, you actually have an opinion and you actually want to like guide your life and you can actually
Yeah.
communicate, or you
Because
want to communicate.
the school that I was at before I fought for myself to go to a regular school, I used to state my opinion under it, and then they're like, "Oh wow, you get to say your opinion."
Right. Yep. So it sounds like the two of you most of the time get angry about these questions. Is that, or do
Yeah,
you
yeah,
sometimes view them as teachable moments for people? Like, does that,
yeah, yeah.
do you,
I would
Teach them
say
a
it depends on my
yeah,
mood. Yeah.
yes,
Um, I think like if I've been working all day and then you're minimized to how you do some basic task, it's like I am so much more than like a basic task, like for all you
yeah,
know, I just presented to our CEO and he loved this new idea that I had, or that I just got my master's degree, or you know what I mean? Like there's all these other things that make up a
yes,
person, and why are we always minimized to some basic task that in the grand scheme of the world doesn't quite matter.
yeah. True, very true.
or when you're hanging out with your friends somewhere and then somebody just walks up on you and you're like having like the best time, and then it gets awkward for you and
Yep.
your friends. Like, I actually was asked by a young lady in high school. This is similar to a Teef's story about the kid in class just being like, "How do you go to the bathroom?" I actually got asked if I sleep with my eyes open, and I'm not making this up. This is, I will not say her name, but I could. I mean, it's. But my friend literally said he's not a fish. Like, and then she got really offended because he was joking with her, but she was genuinely
But
curious. Like,
but are you joking with her? But in a serious like way, like
yes,
on so
yes, yes.
Well,
And then ever since that interaction, that person was like, he's not nice. Like, she put it on me that I wasn't, or that my friends are not nice anymore because they belittled her question. And so I do try not to do that, but I try to keep my mouth shut, like a T was almost saying, like, it's none of your business, and then just like move on. Or I fully embrace answering the question and realize what I'm getting
yeah,
into. Right. Like, that's, but it
yeah.
has to be in the right frame of mind, it has to be in the right space
I
to be
think
able
like
yeah,
the
to be able to
thing
do that.
I think the thing that always gets me is that depending on what the person is asking, especially if it's like a super personal thing they're asking, that would be rude to any non-disabled person. But if you give them an answer back that's rude, as far as like you said, like having a sarcastic comment or, talking some
Yes,
sass, then they're like, oh, well, this person's in a bad mood and they're rude and, whatever. And it's like, but don't you realize that what you asked was rude? Isn't that
yes,
yeah,
interesting?
yes, and it does it puts pressure on people like us to kind of
Mhm.
always take the high road. You know what I mean? Like, all the time, and
yeah,
it gets really
yeah,
annoying. But it kind of leads to my I I'll say my last question is like, I'm sure there are young adults or family members that are dealing with this, right? Whether it's a mom that gets, like, I'm sure, parents or guardians or brothers or sisters get like in private moments get told, "Oh, I don't know how you do that with
Mhm.
your kids," or like, in the past, like, "I don't know how you deal with all that," or my wife gets,
yeah,
"I don't know how you're married to him." Now, people could say, "Well, you're weird, right?" And that's why, like, why would you ever want to marry you? But it's because they're like, "Oh, God bless you for, helping him through all the things you have to or whatever. When she's like, no,
Yeah,
that's not.
yeah, and they tell my mom, in my situation, they tell my mom, because I have a twin brother. He,
Yes.
and I don't know if you knew, but he also works with Stan and Josie. But anyway, they were telling me, my mom, they were like, how they're not a burden to you. And my mom, and these are women, like grown
Well,
women. Like,
yes.
they're not a burden to you. And then my mom told them off.
Yeah. So Atif, just so everybody's clear, Atif mentioned that he has a twin brother, right? That and you both have the same disability, right? It just this kind of is what
Yeah,
it is,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
It
yeah,
just kind of happened that way. It's not like like, and so people will talk to your family about doesn't isn't that awful or isn't that a burden, right? And
yeah,
so it's
yeah,
almost like families deal with that how do you question in a different way. And so my question to
yeah,
both of you is like, what kind of advice would you give to youth or parents who are kind of dealing with these questions, asking
yeah,
that out of nowhere or having an opinion like that? What
yeah,
would you
yeah.
what would your advice be, Aaron? Do you want to go first, and I'll kick it to Atif?
Sure. So I think like there's two different perspectives I have. There's like the person who has a disability and maybe the parents. And obviously I'm not a parent of,
Yeah.
a disabled kid, but what I can speak to is I think often like people don't want to come directly to the person with the disability sometimes about like more intimate or personal questions. And so I feel like the best thing that I can say to parents is like if there's a question that you find offensive if it was asked to you and someone's asking about that with your child, maybe just say, like, would you ask this to my child personally and like to their face? Probably not. So, like, that's something that we don't need to talk about and kind of move on. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
there's also times where there's just questions that maybe they want to ask your kid and aren't offensive, but it's like the parent shouldn't always be answering for them. Like, why don't you talk to the person themselves? Because just because they have a
Yeah.
disability
So
doesn't talk.
facilitating the fact that your
Yeah,
kid can answer these questions also. And
sure.
before you answer, Atif, I was going to say one of the things that my mom, I guess, inadvertently did was facilitate the ability for me to share my story to classmates,
Hmm.
right?
yeah,
Like she was like, Everett should do a report about his disability and like research it, which then led me to like do that, but then also share my stuff and I felt comfortable to share that. And I
Hmm.
think there are some youth out there that would feel very empowered by having a platform to talk about this is my disability, this is what I experience.
yeah, yeah.
And you'd be surprised how that opens the door to conversation. But Atif, what kind of advice would you give to other youth that are being asked these questions randomly or
Just keep going with your goals and keep going further in life. Because if you just get wrapped up with this, it's just gonna destroy you. Because there was a time in my life where it was gonna destroy.
yeah, it can. And yeah, so it's like it can destroy you, or maybe that's I mean, but it can really hamper like where
Uh,
you're headed to.
yeah, Aaron, what were you gonna say? Because you look like you want to say something to that.
Aaron just agreeing. Aaron
No,
is
I
just
just think
it's almost
everything
like
we're saying in this
involuntary shaking your
podcast,
head, like
yeah, it's
involuntary
just this
shaking.
whole podcast has just been only speaking the truth. So, but I think like one of the things I was gonna say too, kind of building off of what Atif was saying, is like I think I like want to give permission to youth to not have to answer to people all the time and to like think about your own bandwidth. And it's like if you had a rough day, you don't have to like give in to people,
Yes, you don't.
especially if it's someone who's older. Like it doesn't have to be something you always have to share. So like feel comfortable with like gauging what you are comfortable with.
Yeah, and you know what? You don't have to apologize either. Like that's I think that people with disabilities are oftentimes forced to, or they feel like they're being forced to like explain something, talk about their lives, their future, their thoughts. And Atif is so right. Like, don't let stuff like that hinder you from achieving what you want to do for you and what you think your life should be. Right. That's very, both of you. It's like you don't owe anybody anything and it's your life and you only get one. So you got to make the best of it, right? You got to do what you can. And if you feel like these kind of things are weighing you down, don't pay it any mind. If you get joy out of answering questions, then answer them all, right? Like it. So it is what it is. I really do appreciate both of you tonight being here. I thank you for being here. I thank you for being so honest about this. And I really do hope that youth and families that are listening to this do hear this. And maybe I hope it relieves some pressure to realize that other people experience the uh what's the word, anger, or they, people get worn down by these questions. Sometimes it's appropriate to be answering questions, but it's really up to you how you handle that. So I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you both, and thank you for listening to this episode. If you want to look at the other 7 episodes we have, you can go to theraycenter.org and find our podcast there and listen to them. They're really, really awesome. Our next couple episodes are going to focus on things like dating and relationships and interacting with community groups that are not disability focused and different things like that. So really, really excited to have that happen. And thank you both again, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving to everybody. Eat that turkey or other goodies. All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.